Photo Basel is all about connecting people and enabling people. And that's a lot of the applause is why we do this, is to engage and to bring people together.
You just heard Sven Eisenhut-Hug, founding director of Photo Basel Fair, touching on one of the many reasons he started the first and still only photography-specific art fair in Switzerland back in 2015. He joins me today with artistic director and fair curator Elwira Spychalska to honour the 10th anniversary of Photo Basel. We speak about the early days of the boutique, family-owned art fair and what it was like starting something new in the art fair capital that is Basel. The many ways in which the fair has grown and evolved over the past 10 years, as well as the challenges of meeting the needs of different audiences and growing the next generation of photography collectors. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. You're listening to Subtext and Discourse Art World Podcast, highlighting unique perspectives on contemporary art and photography. I'm your host, Michael Dooney. To celebrate the 10th anniversary of Photo Basel, I have 3 double VIP passes to give away exclusively to listeners of the podcast, more details of which will be shared later in the show. Until then, please enjoy our conversation. So Sven Eisenhut-Hug and Elwira Spychalska, thank you for joining me on the podcast. And I guess first up, I should say congratulations on the upcoming 10th anniversary of Photo Basel. That's awesome that you guys have reached that milestone. I thought before we got into the fair and everything, we can maybe touch on how you both came to photography. Like what was the kind of lead up to everything beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I graduated from a hospitality management school. You know, if you're born and raised in Basel, there are not that many things to do. And the Art Basel, yeah, let's be honest. And Art Basel Week is and was always one of the highlights. You know, when you grow up here as a teenager, you just want to be part of that week. You know, once I graduated, a couple of friends of mine, we just, came together and figured out, when does Basel shine? And we just figured out that's an incredible week. And if we can add something to that week that was missing, I think we came from an event perspective. And that's basically how we started, coming to the conclusion that there might be a slot for a photography art fair.
Did you collect photography?
No. Oh. And I'm not even a photographer myself, literally. So looking back, Michael, to be honest, my dad, who passed away 21 years ago, was a hobby photographer. And you can always connect the dots by looking back. Yeah. So the house of my mom that she still lives in has a lot of black and white photography of my dad. So maybe I was, there must have been something, right? Yeah. But, looking back, it became clear. But no, we just wanted to add something to that wonderful week. And it happened to be photography.
And for me, it actually came while I was studying art history. So I was always interested in art history. We were always going to art museums because growing up in Basel, that's what you do usually during the weekends. You go with your family to art museum. And I always loved paintings, but at some point I kind of felt that I cannot approach them as easily as I could do with photography. And when I started studying art history, I just kind of noticed that what I was the most drawn to was photography, classes about photography. And then when I started having the opportunity to working at Photo Basel, that was kind of the path that I decided to go also in my studies of art history.
When did you start at Photo Basel?
Well, now here it comes. 8 years ago. Can you imagine? Okay. As an intern, literally, she literally grew into that role. And it's fantastic and outstanding that, we're all quite young and having someone like Elwira with us since almost the beginning.
Yeah.
At that age, it's just fantastic. She really knows the fair inside out. That also makes her the perfect candidate to be the artistic director of this edition because she literally knows everything from inside out. And I think that makes it special. And, we sign a lot of our emails with your Photo Basel family. It's literally a family, it's not just a claim. It's, my wife works at the VIP desk. My mom runs the cafe. So it is a family business. And I think that's what also differentiates us from a lot of other fairs, I'd say. But yeah, that's Elvira's path. And I think it's wonderful, that we're still doing this in this team spirit, I would say.
Yeah, well, even for yourself, that you're the founder and director since the beginning. Like, that's rare, I think.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're right. I mean, 10 years, to be honest, yeah, it is a bit rare. And I've seen colleagues come and go at other fairs, and we always try to have a good relationship with other fairs because there are not that many. There are 300 fairs on a global scale. There may be a dozen photography fairs worldwide. So we usually try to be friendly to each other and benchmark as good as we can. And I think I've seen a lot of directors come and go, and I think it's a bit... Yeah, but as you mentioned, it's Photo Basel is owned by us. It's not a big corporation behind us. which has also some negative. I mean, obviously the resources are scarce, but we're in full control. And I think that's, as a boutique fair, that's really kind of special in today's world and market. And I think it defines who we are, I would say.
Yeah.
You mentioned the fact that we sign with family, and I think that's also something that galleries that come many, many years to Photo Basel kind of notice, because as Sven mentioned, we are a very small core team, but of course during the Photo Basel week, we are having a much bigger team. And I think that's something that's really wonderful, that we have people that we've been working with for so many years already. And even though some of them have different jobs by now, they always take this week off to be at Photo Basel and work with us, even though they very often do jobs that are not related to art at all. But I think like kind of this young spirit that the art fair still has and is kind of still living by it is kind of bringing the people together every year. And I think that's also something that's so special, that when the galleries who are coming many years to Photo Basel, when they come and when they are greeted by the team, they very often know the name of the people. They know their faces, because they recognize them year after year.
Yeah, that's really nice. So how was it then at the very start, like founding the fair? Because I've been to Basel a few times, and it's an exciting week, but it's also a really chaotic and busy week. And I think from the outside, a lot of people know Art Basel and they just assume that it's one event, but it's actually a lot of things, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of fairs, a lot of things that happen. And at the beginning, galleries, they were like, they asked us like, who are you guys? Have you done it before? Who's doing the fair? And I think it was literally in the kitchen of acclaimed gallerist Esther Verdehoff from Paris. She was very curious back in December 2014 about this new fair. And, we talked to her and we knew that she was a big enough fish to, if she signs up, we could go out. And I think that was a great breaking point for us, or a breakthrough for us with her signing up, because in a lot of other galleries, they had us on the map. But as you mentioned, Basel is a brand. People in America, they don't even know that it's a city. They think it's a brand, which is crazy,
Yeah.
But, because we're so distinctive and because we are from Basel, also with Art Basel, I mean, there is no relationship, but we always try to speak friendly to each other. And they know that we do something it's an add-on to what they show. It's not like another satellite fair that just is there because they're there. It's a niche market it's a niche of a niche, right? And we have our own audience. And of course, it's an overlapping audience. And the momentum of Art Basel is crucial, but it's a standalone fair. And I think that's also kind of interesting for galleries that love to be in Basel at that time, but don't have the means, the money, or the quality to do Art Basel, but they don't lose their faces if they do Photo Basel, because it's such a distinct signature fair for the medium, something that Art Basel doesn't cover like we do it. So I think that's another benefit. And that's why we're still around, I would say.
Yeah, I didn't realize till I spoke with Alyssa Widmer, who was one of the artistic directors a few years ago, that Photo Basel is the first and still the only photography-specific fair in Switzerland.
In Germany, even.
Oh, in the German-speaking world.
Yeah. There's nothing in Germany. So it's a bit special.
Why do you think it took so long for Switzerland to get its own photo fair? Because Art Basel has existed since 1970, I think.
Yeah. I think it's hard to say. I think they had a photography sector in the early 90s even. And I don't know, it was probably too little money involved, right? Still. And, it's an undertaking that's very risky. And I think looking back, we were like in our early 30s and we just we underestimated the journey.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know it, we didn't come from the industry, our parents weren't acclaimed gallerists. So we just knew that we loved events and we liked that week and we were good at organizing, but we had no clue. So we spoke with the blue chip galleries, Zwirner, Hauser, Pace. We spoke with all of them and they're like, who are these guys? But we had not this respect that I now have, right? We were just like, these guys. And I think that was kind of interesting. And again, money-wise, you have to really be lean to make a profit, right? It's just like that. But we've always managed to be profitable and not have any crazy extravaganzas and stuff, but just lean and mean and good and quick and small and,
Yeah, which is absolutely important in the art world.
Yeah.
So looking back over the past 10 years then, was there a point when you felt like now it's working? Like the first couple of years must have been really, you were still finding your feet, I guess. 2019,
if I may say this. So 2019, we added a floor to the fair and it was just like there were always enough people, visitors throughout the week, because it's a week, don't get me wrong. It's other usual fairs, they have a VIP on Thursday and then a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Photo Basel, as like Art Basel, we start Monday to Sunday. It's massive, right? 2019 was the first year we really thought like, yeah, it had enough audience. It was really, it had a buzz. And then we had a lot of applications coming in for the 2020 edition that then got canceled. So the moment of excitement and the depression, they were really close. And I think our biggest challenge obviously was to go through the pandemic. I think that was really tough. But we were also the very first photography fair to go completely online and virtual with a startup called Kunstmatrix from Berlin, Germany. We had a fantastic deal with these guys. And so we just kept on going. But I think the breakthrough was 2019. So after our fourth edition, it was kind of like it started to really make sense. And also financially, it started to become sustainable.
And I think also the fact that after the first edition, Photo Basel moved to Volkshaus, that was also like a big change for me. At least I remember going to the very first edition of Photo Basel, which took place in Ackermannshof. And I think there were 15 galleries back then. 18 galleries. And in seeing that, there was something very special, seeing something that was dedicated to only photography in Basel, because other than that, in Basel, we never had anything that was dedicated solely to this medium, because like looking at Swiss photo history, only in the 1970s, we had the very first gallery that was dedicated solely to photography, right? With Anita Neugebauer, and then also like the Photo Stiftung, but there you always needed to go to Winterthur. So there was nothing really comparable.
Or the Élysée in
Lausanne. But there was nothing really comparable to that in Basel.
Maybe also because, we have an incredible density of world-class museums. So it's I think people shy away from, if you're even in a smaller place than Basel, maybe you're crazy enough to do something, but Basel, you always have to benchmark with the very best. And I think people did shy away from that. And we were just too naive, too young to realize the field we got into. But we had nothing to lose. We had our day jobs at the beginning. It was just a hobby. We had nothing to lose. And I think that's when things flourish because, everything you do is just great. That's how it started. We had no pressure, no nothing,
Oh, cool. That's really nice. And with each year, I think you've added new parts. So you've had talks and tours. And I feel like you also collaborate a lot with other people within Switzerland and Basel.
Yeah, we do. And because also space is scarce, we love the Volkshaus, but it's, we always have to keep an eye on the space. So it's always quality over quantity. And I think 2 years ago, we realized we wanted to show more special exhibitions, but we had no additional space. And a great fair is like a casino. You would not let people out, right? It's true. There's no daylight, you don't see the exit signs. You want to keep them in, right? With food and beverage and everything. You want to spoil them. Art Basel, they mastered that, right? But for us, it was clear that we needed to bring a few new elements. And so we implemented something called the parcours. So special exhibitions within the gallery booth. So for example, Elwira plus Annabelle magazine, they curated a special exhibition basically according to female artists, right? But it's not a dedicated space. It's within the fair, right? And those things, you have to stay creative. You have to stay on your toes to every year to deliver something, not just new, but something of value towards your gallerists, because those are the main clients of ours, plus the visitors / collectors, right? With the limitations we have money-wise, but also space-wise. So we're forced to be creative.
And I think that creating those parcours was also a bit a response to what our audience was saying. So because it's a fair dedicated solely to photography, some of the collectors who are not really collecting photography, but maybe paintings or sculptures, were maybe feeling like, okay, we're not going to find something there for us. And I think it was a couple of years ago that the first galleries started really showing a lot of works that were really going beyond photography as a medium. And I think that was also like a sign for us that there is this need of kind of highlighting those positions as well, because they really kind of stood out. And some people maybe kind of even struggled to understand them as photography. I remember, I don't know how many years ago it was, there was a gallery showing a sculpture with photos. And that was kind of, at least from what I remember, kind of the very first time we had like a 3-dimensional photography. and kind of looking now at the different approaches to the medium and what contemporary artists are doing, we really saw that there is a lot of going on with kind of making also photography like unique pieces. And that's why I think it's so nice that we also have this parcours called Beyond Photography, where we highlight really various positions that fit into this category, because they either use different techniques that are maybe a bit special, or they really go into like the third dimension and they show sculptures, or they print photographs on concrete or on stones, or like also textiles. And I think that's also something that I personally really value in the approach we have to photography, that we show it as a very open medium, open to everybody.
Yeah, I was wondering that, because I suppose for this year's edition, the 2025, you've got 39 different galleries from 15 countries with over 450 positions by more than 150 artists. And because photography has so many different, let's say, eras or periods, it also has different audiences, and people have certain expectations for what photography is and what it isn't. So when you're curating or when you're selecting the galleries, like what is it then that you're looking for? Is it more this sort of contemporary approach to photography, or this open approach where it isn't just black and white photo reportage?
I'll let you answer in a minute. I think crucial, not because she's the genius, but if you're managing a fair, it's a very thin line between quality and being commercially successful. It's horrible, and you would like to please everybody, but it's a mission impossible, right? So that's just from my perspective as also an entrepreneur, and also, someone that listens to the galleries. They need to sell. At the same time, curators would like to see something that's probably more courageous, right? But you always have to find the perfect balance, the perfect mix between those two, I think we can always agree on that we dislike the decorative photography just cause. But again, it's a thin line, and we always have to kind of balance this out in a constant, and that's where Elwira comes in a constant creative dialogue with key stakeholders such as our gallerists.
And I think, as you said, it's always sort of like a balance act. So whenever I speak with galleries about the program they're going to show, because for so many years I'm already working for an art fair, and at the same time I'm an art historian, so I love those photographs that have really like deep meaning and are very difficult sometimes to understand for the normal public. But I think that it's kind of very important to always balance it out so that we have positions that speak to everybody, because as Sven said before, it's a very long fair. So of course, at the beginning of the week, we really noticed a lot of professional people coming, right? So we have, of course, a lot of curators, a lot of collectors who really know a lot about this medium. But of course, towards the end of the week, we are kind of becoming more of an art fair also for people living in Basel or in Switzerland, or like coming to Basel only for this week. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the positions that we are showing, is that we kind of try to cover it all. So we have some works that are very difficult in the approach that maybe the curators are understanding more and can really engage with that, but also people who are new to this medium, or like, for example, even are not collectors but have a new house and would like to have some photography on their walls rather than paintings, which are usually much more expensive. And I think that's what we really try to do, to have like this spectrum of different positions.
Yeah, wow, that would be hard, because you do have quite a lot of different audiences there, like especially meeting the usual sort of high-end professionals that are going to Basel each year, but then also the photo curious that are in Basel for the week and they want to come and see what you're doing. And then, the local public that just want to drop by and and see what's going on.
And they're important, to be honest. They're important sales-wise, because the Swiss audience, they have enough money to buy. They have a buying power that is probably different than it is in different parts of the world, right? And that makes us really special as well, and you have to cater to this broad, range. And we do this with the utmost respect. But of course, you cannot please everybody. People always ask me, like, when are you happy? And is there a point where you're happy? Sorry to take that question away. But no, you could never be happy, because I think I'd be the happiest if all the galleries would sell out on Monday evening. right? To only museums and prop collectors, but still also to some audience. But that's just never going to happen, not even at Art Basel. Those times are over. And I think if you don't reach that, you cannot be happy because you always try to make it happen and you try to enable everything. And it's a very complex. I always keep telling people it's not rocket science we do, but it's a complex job because there's so many different stakeholders to work with and to find solutions with on so many different levels, and that makes it rather complex.
Yeah, definitely. So we touched on the beyond photography part. Was there anything unexpected for either of you two that you've seen that you thought, wow, I didn't think anybody would do this with photography?
Well, we've seen a lot. So, there are a couple of positions that obviously stick with me over the course of time. One in particular, Stitched. She took photos. Actually, she took color photos of mountain areas and printed them in black and white and had a process of months of stitching over the works. Iris Houteke is her name. And also, she came to the medium. I think she became an artist at a rather later stage in her life. She's not a young artist. And those works resonated a lot and do resonate with me. And I think it was the first moment I realized, like, those are unique pieces. They resonate with me personally, but they also resonate with a large audience. And I think that's when it's for those positions we've created beyond photography, I would say.
I think for me, it was Suzette Templin. I think that was last year. I really remember her works because that was the very first time that we had some works hanging from the ceiling. Yeah. And because of their gigantic size and of the atmosphere that they were doing in this first floor where we have daylight, it was something very special for me because, of course, as the core team, we are very early at the fair. So I remember like walking in the first floor in early morning and seeing this sculpture kind of hanging and kind of moving a bit slowly from the wind that was coming from one open window. That was something really beautiful and almost like very meditative. So I think that was a position that I really, really liked when it comes to beyond photography.
There was another section, I think, which is one we definitely need to point out, Novum, which we are showing works that have been exhibited for the first time. Does that mean brand new works or?
Yes and no. It can be also something that's rediscovered. My dear late friend, Roger Ambert, who passed away 2 years ago, was a big inspiration on a personal level for me. He had works on dias, right? From the, I would say, 70s, 60s, maybe even. And they were never they were not ready to be shown or produced. And basically they produced them specifically for Photo Basel. And
wow.
I think that was and it's concrete photography. It's very sophisticated, let's put it that way, and for me to see that, and that was like a remaster, because obviously those works were here, but they were never shown. And I think that's fantastic. So it's not only emerging talents that show brand new work or actual talents that show works, artists that show works, but it can also be a position like the one of Roger Ambert and usually everything was black and white, but those particularly were colorful. And it's just like, if I had extra money, I would have bought them all because they're fantastic. And back then he was still alive, so it was somewhat affordable. Now, obviously, a lot of those things are at the Photo Stiftung even. I think they're at the Elysée as well. So that was Novum, that's something where like, oh my God, this is brilliant. And I think we had this idea because, we show everything on the website that is seen, right? That is exhibited. Some other fairs like Art Basel, they won't do that. They don't even know what all the galleries are showing because it's like an impossible amount of works. But for us, it's all very visible and transparent. But with Novum, we were able to really wow collectors, because it's a sign that says, okay, this work has not been shown anywhere. And to me, I think that's really exciting. It's like a treasure hunt, you want to see that. And I think so, we were forced again to be creative, to create something new. And we never know the reaction of the audience. We won't know. But we have this, again, we're young and we just do it. And if you don't like it, that's fine. You can feedback us, but we can just try it, and that's the beauty of this boutique character and of this flat hierarchy. We can just say, let's do that. We don't have to ask anybody, except, of course, the artistic direction needs to be in line with everything. But given she is, I think Novum really has this great impact. And I still think it's a wonderful idea to have a parcours with a handful of works with these characteristics. Yeah.
I assume they're from then the exhibiting galleries or the galleries that are applying with discoveries.
Yeah. And then Elwira gets into the dialogue. It's just like, hey, we have this parcours, we have this theme. And if you happen to have a work, and sometimes they really don't know and they really want to show it this particular artist and they don't care. But sometimes they dig deeper. And, lots of our gallerists are also dealers, and they have some treasures laying around, I would call it, and they're like, oh my God, yeah, this series has not been shown or this B-roll. I mean, with Höpke, who passed away, I know that there's a massive amount of works that never made it to the daylight, right?
Yeah.
And that's spectacular, and if you gallerists, dig a bit deeper and we can highlight these works according to this Novum standard and also give it we have the mandate for every gallery and every artist. So we never highlight something specifically because we can't do that. But with sectors, we can on some level. And I think that's the beauty. And yeah, it's a lot of extra work for us, for the galleries, but it does pay off because you can do specific tours, according to those sectors.
Yeah. Elwira, as an art historian, have there been any real wow moments for you where somebody's brought something forward and you're like, whoa, I didn't expect this?
I think it was surely like Roger Amber.
Too, yeah.
I'm currently writing my master thesis about him because it's a position that really needs to be highlighted more. And sadly, he passed away, but I think that now there's going to be soon an exhibition on his work in the Photo Museum or the Photo Stiftung. So I think that was definitely a position, but also seeing works that were not shown before. Like, for example, this year we also have a couple of artists that produced some works that going to be shown for the very first time at Photo Basel that are also incredible. And I think that's what's so interesting is that working for so many years in the field of photography, you see so many works, but at the same time, it's always this very nice moment when you see something that the gallery send you via WeTransfer and then you see it, you open it and oh wow, nobody saw that before.
Yeah.
And that's going to be exhibited. So I think that's always very interesting to kind of have this moment of opening these attachments and seeing works and knowing okay, so they're going to be exhibited, but you don't exactly know how they look in reality because you only know these photos on your screen and then kind of seeing them for the very first time when they're unpacking the works and they're hanging them. I think that's always very special.
Yeah.
Followed by the very sad moment that you realize you can't afford them.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And you're also a rather big collector for your age, I would say. And I think that's a pity from our job because, we wander through the fair, obviously during the off hours. And it's a pity because you just need another 100K just to go shopping. And that's the hard thing, but that's the reality, I guess.
But I think that speaking of collecting photography, I think that's what I noticed at Photo Basel also during the last years is that we have more and more young people buying photography. And that's what I find really beautiful and really interesting because I also observed that with my friends and some of them are really not much interested in the field of art per se, and they're doctors or they're doing other jobs, they're in science, but because they're earning enough money in Switzerland to afford some works, they kind of start with photography. And it's something very beautiful to observe because in 1 year they buy maybe a piece that's not that expensive, and then next year they're coming back and they're saying, oh yeah, I have budget that's a bit higher this year. And I think that's also something very, very beautiful for me as a young person to see that a lot of people who start with buying maybe one photo because, well, they have the space in the office and they would like to hang something beautiful there, that it's sort of become like a drug addiction that once you started buying photography because it's much cheaper than buying, of course, at other fairs because you can start with buying maybe works that are 2,000 because I would roughly say that some works are between 2,000, 5,000, 8,000. And of course, then we also have works that are much more expensive. But I think that in Switzerland, a lot of people have the budget to buy photography. And I think that's what's so interesting to see how many young people are starting buying photography because it's on one hand more approachable as a medium. And on the other hand, it's more affordable.
And it's our job as a fair, that's exactly our job. We need to cater to a new audience for gallerists and we need to build a new collector. We need to breed tomorrow's collectors, right? Because the classic ones are dying away, obviously. So I think that's why we do the fair. That's the job. And to engage with the audience. And we do a lot of guided tours, and we do them free. And every year we're like, oh, why are we doing this for free? It's crazy. But it's so crucial that if you have, a lawyer's office and they're coming to the fair and you treat them nice and you show them around, it becomes approachable. And I think I always take people, in my circle of friends that are not in the industry, right? And for them to visit a gallery is maybe, we're not in Paris. So in Switzerland, it might be even more difficult, because you shy a bit away from entering a gallery and not knowing about what they're showing. And I think a fair is the perfect stage to just, roam through the aisles and engage with gallerists or even artists if they're present. And then if you like something, you can really start the dialogue and maybe become a first-time buyer, and that maybe turning into a collector. That's the job.
Yeah, I think from other people I've spoken to as well, that education and teaching people about photography as well is just as big a part of the job as it is selling, because
absolutely,
people are nervous about it and they're a bit unsure. Particularly if you I think for yourself as Art Basel, if you're getting people from the other fairs coming over that are maybe more used to paintings, they're more used to sculpture, they're more used to other mediums, photography could be a really new thing for them. So any kind of help that they can get is obviously beneficial.
And I think that's also what we do in the guided tours, because the groups are usually quite small. So we try not to have more than 10, max 12 people, because you are standing in front of this group and you're introducing yourself, and the people kind of understand that they can ask you questions that they would maybe not ask a gallerist, because maybe they would feel like a bit uncomfortable, because when you're talking about edition, and I remember some people do not know about what is an edition, and very often they ask me like, hey, could you expand on that? Or maybe when you're talking about a technique, and they would maybe shy away of asking the gallerist of like, oh, what is that? Whereas when you have like the small group and you have like this personal connection to them, they are more keen on asking you questions. And afterwards, very often after finishing a guided tour, you see those people kind of having more sort of self-confidence, and you really see that they're approaching galleries and then kind of asking some other questions. And I think that's also so beautiful. And yes, it's usually a lot of guided tours. It's a lot for the team, also a lot for the gallery. I think they're just so extremely important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for probably all of us that have gone to a lot of galleries and have been in the field for a while, we forget that it is hard for some people to say, what does this print mean? What's an edition? And because it's normal for us, we just assume then that it's normal for other people, and we forget that it can be daunting. So yeah, I think definitely the guided tours are really good to help people get over that hurdle. I saw you've got two other, in addition to the curator sections, you have two awards. So there's the MauriceMauriac Photo Basel Award and the SIYU Award. So can you maybe explain a bit what these two prizes and awards are?
Yeah, well, Maurice is a watch brand, a very cool young watch brand. Being Swiss, you obviously, watches, it's all about watches. You have to, you're born into this. But it's a family business from Zurich. I met the founder, who also sadly passed away, but the kids are taking over, two sons and the daughter. And I just fell in love with the watches, and they're super cool. And I think it's a match made in heaven, because I love watches. So they don't need to pay me. They just need to give me watches. But the great thing is, basically, they said they want to have a prize where they have a short list of young talents that are shown at Basel, and then they basically select one and they buy this piece for their own collection, which is great.
Oh, cool. That's really good.
It's really fantastic. In addition, this year, and that's something that I'm really super excited about, they create a Basel date watch. So get that. In Switzerland, we all have different dialects, right? So Zurich pronounces the weekdays different than the Basel people, or the Bern or Geneva, obviously. So they create specifically a Basel date, which has Basel dates on it, Monday, Tuesday, etc. But it gets even better. So if you buy a Basel date watch, there is a Photo Basel edition. So the back has our logo on, which is
wow.
Well, the PB. A lot of people don't know what this called logo means. It's a P and a B for Photo Basel. And it gets even better. The first 10 of those watches basically get a print. And it's our signature key visual made by Put, which we're really grateful to have on board since the very first year with the popsicles, with the ice. And so that's the link with Maurice de Mauriac. And the SIYU Award stems from the Nachwuchsförderpreis, which used to be the largest and only prize for emerging talent.
For emerging talent, exactly. Yeah. And they asked us this year if we could present the 10 people who are like in the final selection. And we thought that is a great opportunity because, as we were talking before, we kind of really try to also show young talents and, of course, already established artists. So that was like a perfect match for this year. And I think it's on Saturday during the fair that they're going to announce the 10 artists who are kind of in the final selection for the award.
And, a fair is always, we're enabling people. So for us, it's also, we obviously get a lot of artists asking us, like, could we connect them with gallerists? And we seldom do because that's their job, right? However, if we know some artists and they're really good, we always love to help because I think that's what a great fair also enable. We create synergies and energies. And the same goes for the SIYU Award because we know it's also the other way around. There's some gallerists that are always looking for fresh talent, right? And I think that's, where do you go? You go to Arles, you go to a lot of festivals to pick some up. You are on Instagram. But, hey, if we have this outstanding prize in Switzerland, done by a nonprofit association, that's also really important. And they've been approaching us. I think it's a wonderful meeting place. Photo Basel is all about connecting people and enabling people. And that's a lot of the applause is why we do this, is to engage and to bring people together on various levels beyond the 7 days that we are live. We are a live marketing event only for 7 days throughout the whole year. But I think that's really special to really be able to create connections. And, that's why we're really keen on having the SIYU Award with us this year.
No, it's really good. And I think also it makes the fair relevant for artists, and people just think, oh, it's just for collectors, it's just for galleries, it's just for whoever else. But then, younger artists can also get exposure to galleries, or galleries can then discover new talent. Exactly. But then even for the artists themselves, just to kind of get some more exposure to the market side of things and understand maybe a bit more about what they need to do for kind of forging a career in the field.
Exactly. And it's good for us too, because that's the new generation. So we need to we need to breed the new collector base, but we're also happy to engage and help new talents to establish themselves in the market, because there's no school, none of the art schools that I know have that art world market in their curriculum, which I think is a pity because at the end of the day, it's about money, it is, we all have to, live off something. So if we can add something to that step, I think it's great.
Yeah, I think I saw one of the talks this year is about the market and emerging collectors. Is that right? Or did I misread something?
It is. So, each year we try to prepare some panel talks, and this year we're having 3 different ones, and one of them is about young talents in the art world, and that's a conversation that is between artists and gallerists, because very often you have artist talks or you have some panel talks with the gallerist, but not very often like a combination of the two words. And I think that's a great topic that we have this year at the fair, that we are engaging into kind of also looking at how is it to be a young artist in the art field, but also how is it to be a young gallerist.
Yeah, who opens a gallery in these times, So, no, and it's a panel that I try to moderate, right? Because I'm really keen on these things, that's the market. So that's the commercial side. And I'm personally really interested in that field. And I think we aren't able to produce 15 panel talks just due to literally the amount of time. But those few we have are really the ones that we're passionate about and also trying to find out. It's even a bit egoistic, I don't care if people show up for that panel. I want to know that myself.
Yeah.
It's having coffee with me and talking about those things,
Before we wrap up, I know that a few years ago you paired with Positions in Berlin, where I used to live. And I think this year you're returning again. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we're a small team and we're, as I said, we're very lean. So we're always looking at opportunities to go out and do crazy things. And we were fortunate back in 2020 when everything got canceled in Basel and nobody had the courage to do anything here. They offered us to join them at the Tempelhof for the 2020 edition. Financially, it was obviously not outstanding for us, but it covered the costs, but morally it was a boost. Like, I think I would have quit without that, because as an entrepreneur, you don't want to do a year of nothing, And it was, yeah, so that was a big light at the end of the tunnel. And then we went to Miami for 2 years in a row, which was quite an adventure.
How does Basel, Miami compare to Basel, Basel?
It's flashy. It's flashier.
Yeah.
It's flashier. It's a bit crazier. You need to know what to show, but then it works. And people don't reflect so much on buying. They see something and they like it and they buy it, right? Versus in Basel or in Europe, it's a bit different. You see it, you reflect, you might sleep on it. It's a bit more, it's thorough here. It's a bit more serious, but I wouldn't miss it. It was nice. However, to be quite honest, with the new uncertainty of going to America, to be quite honest, I'm Swiss. Our passport usually is we could
access all areas.
It doesn't feel good to do that right now, just because nobody knows what's going on. So a lot of the gallerists, obviously, they need security, and we can't provide that for this year. But we still wanted to do something, and we remained friends with the positions team. It's also kind of a family affair, I would say, with Christian and Heinrich and their team. So when they said, hey, why don't you come back and do something with us? We were like, yeah, let's do that. So we're happy to go back with I don't want to call it pop-up, but it's like a fair inside the fair. It's a couple of booths in Berlin in September. And I'm really personally very excited because, we know the market is different than it is in Switzerland, right? Especially in Berlin, it's a different market. Yes. But it's also, the prices are also different, for the booths. So it's exciting to go. And as I mentioned, as a fair, the challenge that we have is we're only live a couple of days a year. And online sales, from our understanding, does not compare with live sales. It just never did. And I was scared at the pandemic. I thought maybe we're all obsolete and it's just artsy, but it didn't monetize and it still doesn't. So therefore, we're really excited to physically be at Positions Art Fair in September in Berlin with a handful of galleries showing Photo Basel Berlin.
Yeah, nice. I think a lot of people overlook the experience aspect of art, and it's not really online shopping and just clicking on, oh, this looks nice. You kind of need to be in amongst it and talking to people and connecting.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I think, and that's what we've seen, if you follow an artist, you get to know an artist through a gallery or through an art fair, and you follow the artist and you buy works, yeah, maybe then you be able to buy straight from the Instagram profile. But I think there's so much more to this experience, as you mentioned, the real life human experience, and that can only be experienced through the engagement, the live engagement and the tangibility. And that's good for us, I would say, and it's more sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're recording this on the 2nd. It'll be live on the 10th, which is a week out from the fair starting. For people that are new to collecting or visiting the fair for the first time, what kind of helpful words of wisdom would you like to impart?
I think, if I may, if an art fair is a perfect opportunity to get in touch with the medium. And I would always say that you should always buy with your eyes and not with your ears. I think it's fair to say. Something you really like, something that at the end of the day hangs behind you instead of something that you keep in a vault. Yes, of course, if the value doesn't decline drastically, that's nice. And to be honest, my wife has a bigger collection than I have, but it's nice if you buy something and okay, it's also in a museum. So that's great. But I think you can just be there and engage, and you have a week of literally coming in and out, exploring, asking questions, and not feeling misplaced. You can just be. And I think that's really nice. And something that I also heard from a collector, and I thought it's wonderful. He told me that wherever he travels, whenever city he goes to, the first touch base he does is at the photo gallery. He feels at home. And I think
nice.
It's really nice. It's, it's like, yeah, it's not for him. That's the home base. And I think it's wonderful. And I think you can really network with so many people in such a limited amount of time, nowhere else than at an art fair. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I think that the engaging part is kind of the most important one. And I think that's something that we really also try at Photo Basel to really kind of enable the dialogue between people who want to buy or interested. And I think that's what we always kind of try to tell people, is that they really need to go ask questions and really kind of soak the works that are around them. And I think that very often when people buy something, it is because they have a personal connection. So very often I think selling art is a lot about storytelling, and very often people can resonate with some aspect of the work. And I think that's what I really like about collecting photography, is that based on your personal experience and interests, you kind of see a work that you really resonate with. And I think that's what I really, really like and really encourage people to do, to kind of look for work that really resonate with their ideas or their stories, and that they kind of really try to engage with the people who are maybe at the fair, be it artists, but of course gallerists as well, and not be scared or like shy away of asking questions, but really kind of start a dialogue and really engage.
Sounds good. Well, it was brilliant speaking to you both. Congratulations again on the 10th anniversary of Photo Basel.
Thank you so much.
And yeah, look forward to seeing how it grows and evolves into the future.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you too.
I hope you enjoyed learning more about Photo Basel from its founding director Sven Eisenhut-Hug and fair curator Elwira Spychalska. If you'd like to visit the fair this year in Basel and have VIP access for the entire week, allowing you to take part in the guided tours, listen to the panel talks, and maybe even start your photography collection, this is how you can do it. Go to my website, www.michaeldooney.net, fill out the contact form, and tell me your highlight from today's episode. The first 3 listeners to do so will score themselves a double VIP pass to the 10th edition of Photo Basel, which takes place from the 17th until the 22nd of June 2025. You can find more details about today's episode in the show notes. And if you don't want to miss out on new episodes of the podcast, please subscribe to Subtext and Discourse on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you know someone else interested in the overlap of photography in the art world, please send them a link to the show. You're welcome to follow me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, and Threads. Otherwise, you can also visit my website, www.michaeldooney.net. There you'll also find the International Photo Festival database I've put together, as well as my webinar for photographers and artists working in lens-based media to better understand the art market and get their work into galleries. That's all for now. Thanks again for tuning in. My name's Michael Dooney, and you've been listening to Subtext and Discourse.